He's a little bit of an American Psycho Gordon Gekko type of vibe of person. You know what I mean?
These are two different people. American Psycho is Patrick Bateman.
I know.
Wall Street is Gordon Gekko. You're saying that there's a merger of the two?
A merger of the two.
Patrick Bateman was actually as successful as Gordon Gekko?
Exactly. Yeah. He's very driven.
That's a strong comparison, my friend.
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm just going off of what other people are saying. Maybe he's a lovely human being. I don't really know. I'm just going off of other people's portrayals. You are listening to Tape Spaghetti, the podcast about the twisted and tangled innards of the music industry. Some of this content may not be for all listeners or viewers, so if it's not for you, no harm, no foul. We'll just catch you on the next one. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of Tape Spaghetti. I am Scott Marquardt. That over there is Blake Weiland. And Blake, I'm amazed by the response to our most recent episode on the internet. It has garnered a lot of controversial takes and comments. And, I didn't know there were so many people who feel that we are not sympathetic enough to the Nazis.
There's at least one in the comment section that seems to think we need to be a little easier on them.
One out of 19 is vastly too high of a percentage.
I agree.
5% is much too high for that opinion.
One comment out of 10,000, that would still be too much for me, but at least I could wrap my head around it. There's that many dumb people and 10,000 people, but 1 out of 19 is not great. I'll be honest.
It's not. Yeah. For the listeners out there, this is probably kind of odd because I don't look all that old. But the circumstances of my birth and my mother's are such that our families are stretched out a long way. So my grandpa was born in 1917 and fought in World War II against the Nazis and Imperial Japan. And so I was very much raised with we don't like that. That was bad.
I think most of us, I did not have a grandfather that fought in the war. He was actually working very hard for the war effort by giving away most of his crop to the U.S. military.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Giving away, selling very, very cheaply. Same thing at the end of the day. So it was a little different circumstance, but I too was always raised with a very aggressive anti-Nazi bias. And I don't like seeing anything that's pro that ever. So that's a little weird. Or even maybe that's not the whole story, guys. I'm like, it is. That's the whole story.
Yeah, let it be. It's all right.
Yeah, it's the whole story. But in that aside, I got a lot of good feedback on it in my messages and all that kind of stuff. There were a few people that just saw the promo clip and were a little concerned that we believed the 432 hertz thing.
I only read the headline. I'm extremely upset.
I'm very concerned that you guys are buffoons. I'm like, oh, well, maybe
we are buffoons.
Yes.
But not for why you think.
Yeah, exactly. That's for other reasons, which will become obvious the more we speak. But yeah, it was a fun episode. I thought you did a fantastic job presenting that whole thing and then actually getting into the history. So if people haven't listened to the most recent episode or watched the most recent episode, head right back there. It's an entertaining one.
It's a fun one. I wish that there were more musical sort of conspiracies. Like we've talked about, there are a lot of them that are just this person died and was replaced, or this person isn't actually dead. There's those for every person. We did an episode history
about replacement theory here. I think episode 6 or something. I don't remember.
And then you've got your Elvis isn't really dead, obviously, which we'll probably talk about that at some point. Jim Morrison isn't really dead, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's plenty of that. Tupac isn't really dead.
Yep.
That's a common one. But those are all the same version. Outside of that, there's not too many great musical conspiracies. If you out there, dear listeners, can think of any very interesting musical conspiracies on par with 432 hertz and all of that, please let us know in the comments. Or what's our email, Blake?
It's something. I forget what it is. I think it's tapespaghettipod@gmail.com. That's what it is.
Tapespaghettipod@gmail.com. Easy to remember for anyone but me.
And me,
kind of Blake.
Yeah.
But please shoot us a note. We would love your suggestions because those are fun. We don't want it to become the whole thing exactly, but it's a fun road to be able to, travel down on occasion.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what I love about doing this thing with you, man, is it's like, sometimes it's just like, I want to talk about this album that has a cool history behind it and dig into all of that. And sometimes it's some crazy conspiracy about the Nazis.
And sometimes it's a lady
and everything in between
chops off people's heads. That was also one for Halloween.
Yeah. We got a little wild there in the Halloween spirit. Now we're pulling back a little bit, back to more of your regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah. Well, and there's not a lot of that either. So I felt like it was an appropriate time to throw that in. Fortunately, there's not a lot of beheading that occurs in our industry, at least not of the physical type, maybe of the monetary type, which is sort of what we're going to get into on this episode in some ways.
I can't wait. And I have to confess something to you, Blake, before we get into this episode without alluding to what it is, though, again, I guess you already know from the title. I told you yesterday on the phone that I was going to dig in and do a little bit of research on this particular topic. And do you know what I did, Blake? I didn't do that.
Yeah,
that is not what I did. I've been busy doing a lot of other stuff today, but not that. I realized when we were about to tape, I was like, nope, didn't do that.
Yeah, that's okay, though. That's all right. I think I got the meat and potatoes here, and I'll be interested in your takes on some of it, because there's the story, and then there's a few other ways to look at the story. And so we're going to kind of go down both angles. Now, from the title, you do know what we're talking about. We're talking about Pearl Jam versus Ticketmaster. Now, this happened while we were alive, but it's a little before our time. We didn't know it was happening. We would have been, I would have been 6 or so when this was happening.
Put me around 4.
Yeah. So we weren't paying a whole lot of attention to the jamming of pearls or the mastering of tickets at that time. It was not a thing we were aware of. But before we get right into that, I just noticed something about myself while looking at the camera here.
You look like that always. That's normal.
Yeah, but this is slightly funny to me. I'm currently wearing the uniform of hey, did you know that I listen to music? Because this is a Thrice flannel that they did a collab with.
Oh wow, it's like a Thrice branded flannel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got their logo right there. I'm wearing a Bouncing Souls t-shirt and a Charles Wesley Godwin hat. By the way, did you know I listen to music? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. I was just like, wow, you're really screaming about your personality right now with your clothing choices. Really telling everybody
not our
about
typical backgrounds of just a smattering of random guitars.
Yeah. Think that we might be a little obsessed.
It's possible. Maybe that's why we work in the industry that we do.
Yeah. It's almost like we had no other choice. But speaking of the industry, let's get into this story about how Pearl Jam tried to take on Ticketmaster and why. So this happened in the early 90s, but we're going to go back a little bit before that, because I think it's helpful to know some of the story of why Ticketmaster is such a behemoth and why that's sort of a problem, even more so now, but that's like a story for a different time. Like talking about what Live Nation and Ticketmaster has evolved into in its current stage is a whole episode in and of itself. I'm sure we'll do it at some point. But this is more about specifically what Pearl Jam was trying to do about it at the time. So Ticketmaster was born from the ticketing industry, which is almost like a separate thing. A lot of this stuff happened, hundreds of years ago. There were ticketing agencies selling the tickets for Broadway plays, sporting events. It was less of a thing for concerts until the hippie movement of the 60s made concerts a thing that a lot of people wanted to go to.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, concerts weren't really all that profitable until the 50s and 60s when rock and roll kind of blew everything up.
You do always hear about like the Beatles playing Shea Stadium and how it was like just a couple of speakers on a stage and sounded awful back then. Like they were not remotely prepared to be broadcasting music throughout the whole stadium that way.
No, it wasn't really a thing, but it gained a lot of steam really quickly. And in 1976, Albert Loeffler Peta Gadwa. I think I'm saying that now, or Gadwa. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. But this name, Scott, you're going to love this name. You ready? Gordon Gunn III.
Gordon Gunn the Third. That's beautiful.
Gordon Gunn. I like that. He should have been in a band himself. Maybe he was. I don't know. They started Ticketmaster. And they started it because...
What year was this? Sorry, say it one more time.
1976.
1976?
Yeah.
I figured with a name like Ticketmaster that it probably like Viacom or something like was an emergent name after somebody put like 300 small ticketing agencies together and was like, now it's called Ticketmaster.
Well, that is exactly what they eventually went on to do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They just had the name that early. That surprises me.
You know, I don't know. Part of me thinks that it was actually called something else, and I left that out of my notes. But I'm remembering from a podcast I was listening to, it might have had a different name at the time.
Okay. All good.
But this is the root of it anyhow. So they're in Phoenix, Arizona. They're trying to make an easier way to buy tickets for an ELO show, Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh, man. ELO is such an underrated band, by the way. Definitely the most underrated of the Traveling Wilburys.
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah.
But they just never had a number one hit, but they had a ton of top 20s. ELO's great.
Very strong fan base, though. But in some ways responsible for Ticketmaster, though I don't actually blame ELO for that. These guys wanted to, they're just like, ticketing's too hard. Why? Let's make this easy. And they started Ticketmaster, and it became pretty successful. They immediately started doing some stuff with at the time, the New Orleans Jazz, now the Utah Jazz, obviously. And so they had some heavy hitters like right off the bat that were using them exclusively for the ticketing services.
This is the Pistol Pete Maravich years of the New Orleans Jazz, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're correct on that. Yes, I believe that is accurate. And it kind of is just a smaller operation that it doesn't have much industry impact until they do something very specific. Now, I'm not sure at what time they did this, but I'm going to say it's sometime in the very late 70s, like 78, 79, or early 80s. I think it was the early 80s. They introduced a concept. So normally you have to pay money to have these ticketing machines, and these ticketing machines are necessary to process everything and keep the databases all straight and make sure you're not double selling tickets and all that stuff. Another thing that was necessary in the ticketing world is the venue owners kind of had to pick a service and stick with it, because the crossing...
That's how it works now too.
Yep, exactly. And the reason for that is if you have two different companies selling tickets, you know, they might be selling the same seat accidentally, and the crosstalk and trying to communicate with these different systems, it becomes a huge mess. So the venue owners are incentivized to pick one. They're also incentivized by things like what Ticketmaster would do and be like, hey, look, we'll give you like $100,000 up front.
That's what I was going to say. That's what happens still to this day is they'll buy out with a big cash sum, you know, a 5-year agreement or something like that.
Yep. And that's part of the story for that episode whenever we get around to that. But that is a big way that they became a monolith. But the other thing that Ticketmaster did before they started with the big cash payments, because they obviously didn't have it at the time, instead of charging for those machines, they gave them to the venue owners for free. Like, hey, we will hook you up with all this equipment. You won't have to pay a dime for it, but we get all the seats, basically.
Just like credit card companies do, you know, now credit card processing companies. They're like, we'll buy you your POS system and all that. We just get 3% of every dollar that comes in. Yep,
exactly. That's exactly what they did. And this got even more aggressive in 1982 when there was a fella named Fred Rosen who came to the helm of Ticketmaster. And Fred Rosen, he shifts the headquarters from Phoenix to Los Angeles. He is like kind of... I don't want to make this comparison exactly because I hope he's not quite this bad, but he's a little bit of an American Psycho Gordon Gekko type of vibe of person. You know what I mean?
These are two different people. American Psycho is Patrick Bateman.
I know.
Wall Street is Gordon Gekko. You're saying that there's a merger of the two?
A merger of the two.
Patrick Bateman was actually as successful as Gordon Gekko?
Exactly. Yeah. He's very driven.
That's a strong comparison, my friend.
Hey, I'm just saying. I'm just going off of whatever the other people are saying. Maybe he's a lovely human being. I don't really know. I'm just going off of other people's portrayals of him, and that's the vibe that I get from it. But he's very smart, very, very smart, very good at business. Like, he's aggressive. He doesn't really care what you think about him. And, I think that's reflected a little bit even in modern times. Ticketmaster's got to be one of the most hated companies in the world. Like, they have they have a terrible public image, and they're okay with that. They're okay with being the whipping boy in this situation. They're
wild.
And because it doesn't matter, right? And in fact, it's kind of part of the strategy, and we'll get into that a little bit. So he comes up with the concept of why are we charging the same service fee to everybody? Why is every act getting the same service fee? Why is every seat getting the same service fee, regardless of what that seat costs? What if we charged more for the more expensive seats, even though it doesn't require us to do anything extra at all to sell those seats? Those people are clearly willing to pay. If you're,
if somebody's going to pay $300, why not $360?
Exactly. And so that makes Ticketmaster a lot of money because he turns out to be right. People are like, well, what's another $20,
Well, and more to the point, yeah. I mean, they have no choice. There's no competition in the market. If they want to see this act in this particular city, this is the event that they're playing. There's typically radius clauses, so bands won't play it too close to their prior concert, so that if you live there, this is your only opportunity, and this is what it costs, and there's no other ticketing agency or way to bypass the fees, so you're going to pay it or you're not going to pay it.
You're going to pay it or you're not going to see Bruce Springsteen, basically.
Right.
And Springsteen actually was somebody who fought against this stuff as well for most of his career, and that's not really germane to the conversation, but worth noting. He was pushing against this very same thing for a long time. But yeah, he was like a hardcore deal maker. You know the guy. I mean, I said Gordon Gekko. It's that type of guy. He's like, we're going to make some money. And he did. He did it through exclusivity, and he did it through the best tech, and he did it through very, very aggressive negotiations and contracts. And it turned Ticketmaster into an absolute powerhouse, but it wasn't without its criticism. So this is where Pearl Jam kind of starts coming in. They, obviously are working with Ticketmaster. Oh, there's one more key thing here. I forgot. In 1991, Ticketmaster acquires Ticketron, or Ticketron rather. Ticketron. There we go. I did it. Which was a huge competitor to them. So once they absorbed Ticketron, they effectively became the only game in town.
Wow. So yeah, they have the monopoly power and they had little, what I was alluding to earlier, like micro monopolies in terms of each show in each region. But then monopolizing that throughout the country on top of it, you control the whole thing, and you can level prices, from market to market. So you don't have people saying, oh, I'll just drive to Phoenix instead of catching it in LA. It gives you a lot of power. And another, general note about concert pricing, I think that's weird, is concerts can be such an inelastic item in terms of demand, because there's always this natural thing with every concert of it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm never going to see the Rolling Stones again. This could be it's 1984. This is going to be the last time they're ever going to play the United States. I've got to go now. And this is kind of hammered in. I was actually listening to one of these reels I was served. It was somebody doing like a modern version of like the Dave Ramsey style, like call in, tell me about your finances and I'll tell you what's wrong with you. And I can't remember all of it, but it was a woman. She was talking about how her husband and her, they make maybe together like 60 grand a year or something. And they have a kid, and they had just spent, who was it they were seeing? But they had spent like $4,500 on floor seats for this artist that they wanted to catch. It might've been like Lady Gaga or something. I'm not sure. And he was like, what is wrong with you? They're like, well, this was our only chance. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Right. And that's the thing. So if you're spending $2,000 on a concert ticket, you may as well spend $3,000. I mean, it's just, at that point, it's crazy, because what people feel is that this is the only time they're going to ever get to see their favorite artist. And, no amount of money is too small. So basically, they're able to take advantage of this one way or the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is that we're talking about it as if they had a monopoly then, and certainly Pearl Jam and others feel that way, and you could make an argument, but it's crazy to think that they've gotten even more powerful as an entity when they combine with Live Nation. Again, separate story, but as bad as this may sound when we're reading all this out, it's actually worse now. And by worse, I don't mean that like It's all just evil. But at the same time, it is worse objectively for the consumers, in my opinion. I guess. So I don't know how objective it is if it's my opinion, but still, it sounds bad.
One of the core tenets of like an efficient capitalistic structure is competition. Absent competition, capitalism begins to look a lot more like what it looks like in a lot of different verticals these days, where you have one player and they can just charge whatever they want. And so there's a lot of exploitation. And in theory, that opens the door. You know, if I'm the only one making jelly beans and I'm selling jelly beans for $50, that opens the door for you or somebody else to make jelly beans or something similar if it's protected by a trademark or something like that, and then kind of get the price down. But things like this are very difficult for another player to get into. Once, when Ticketmaster has locked up these agreements with every venue, there's no easy way for somebody else to come in and take it out, especially if they're contractual agreements.
Yeah, and in the Live Nation situation, those two companies are combined, and so the ticketing agency and the
promoter and venue owner and the ticketing agency are the same person. Yeah.
Yep. So it becomes interesting, and that becomes part of what Pearl Jam is pushing against. So it's kind of interesting. But we get into here into 1992, and here's like probably the first flashpoint. Pearl Jam's wanting to do a free concert in Seattle called Drop in the Park. And they're like, yeah, free concert. Anybody can show up. Keep in mind, Pearl Jam is one of the biggest bands in the world at this point. Like this would be the equivalent of like nearly a Taylor Swift level person saying, I want to do a free concert. This is an enormous band. Yeah. And Pearl Jam is like, hey, let's make it a free show. It's going to be great. And Ticketmaster says, we're not distributing the tickets unless we can charge $1.50 per ticket. Now, even in 1994, I don't think that most people would mind, right?
Like, no, that's pretty cheap, right?
Yeah, that's a cheap Pearl Jam concert. But kind of on principle, Pearl Jam's like, no, this is a free show. We're playing it for free. Everybody's doing everything. Like, we're paying for the production, all this stuff. Why do you get to make about $45,000 off of this thing that we're doing?
For reference, I wanted to look it up. $1.50 in 1992 is $3.35 today.
I'd pay $3 to see Pearl Jam for sure.
That is about like the minimum convenience fee. So it's not, it's not crazy. But you're right. If they're taking all that risk, why are these guys going to make the money? And they're not saying we're going to share this money with you.
Exactly. Yes. And so Pearl Jam's like, no, we're not doing that. And they actually get with the city of Seattle, and the city distributes the tickets instead. Now they do have to distribute tickets. They do need to.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah. Why were they going to? Why distribute tickets at all?
Because they only have so much room. I don't know if you've ever been to Seattle, but there's not any like Central Park.
I've been to Seattle.
I don't know. You never told me you've been to Seattle. Oh yeah, you did. You just went not that long ago. That's right.
I've been a couple times,
but there's not
moved to Seattle. But anyway.
There's not any like big Central Park type place, right? There are some larger parks, but there's nothing that's going to hold everybody that wants to see Pearl Jam. Right?
Yeah, no. I've walked through a few parks, but they're not that big. Yeah.
No, they're not. There's just not. So I don't know where they played exactly, but they had to cap it. So it was just whoever could get the free tickets. And I'm not sure how the city distributed them, but that is actually, I thought, a really clever idea. The city's used to dealing with all these citizens distributing all kinds of paperwork. They probably have a system that would make this work. And they did. So that just kind of solidifies the band. Like, they're like, no, okay, this is ridiculous. We're not going to be playing these shows with the elastic pricing structure. We want to keep the face value of the ticket around $18. This is for just like normal shows, and cap the service charges at 10%. So $1.80 basically. Okay. So they want it $20 all in is what they're shooting for, around $20. And they also want this, and this is not what Ticketmaster wants at all. They want the tickets to be itemized so that you can see how much you're paying for the ticket and how much the service fee.
Ticketmaster is just jamming it in there, and nobody knows what's going to Ticketmaster versus the venue or the band.
Exactly.
And I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. So they want it to be all itemized on the ticket so you can see who's getting what, basically. And of course, Ticketmaster don't like that very much. So they're trying to negotiate a huge nationwide tour. And Ticketmaster's saying, no, we're going to charge $375 for this service charge. And they're like, no, you're not going to do that. And you're going to itemize it. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to charge $375 and we're not going to tell anybody about it, basically. And this gets them to file a complaint, Pearl Jam, with the U.S. Department of Justice, in this particular, the Antitrust Division.
Right.
So, yep. So the allegations are Ticketmaster's exclusive venue contracts and fee structure are anti-competitive. Service charges are inflated and rebated to venues and promoters. So that's the other piece of the pie. They're like, wait a minute, you're charging this. The venues are getting it. The promotion companies are getting it. We're not getting it. Like, what's going on? At least not at this point. I know that happens these days, but back then, apparently it wasn't happening. Even for Pearl Jam. Like, again, one of the biggest bands on the planet. So they're kind of keeping everyone's interested in not itemizing them and not showing you what's going where to whom. And so Janet Reno's involved, and we get Ann K. Bingaman, who's at the Department of Justice, and Pearl Jam goes to have a hearing on June 30th, 1994. And the committee is the House Government Operations Subcommittee on Information, Justice, Transportation, and Agriculture. It's interesting to see how that fits into all this stuff, but I'm like, information and justice, I guess. Probably not transportation and agriculture, but still. So
who knows?
We've got everybody in the band, along with, primarily the key witnesses are Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament. I think that's how you say his name. I've only read it. I've never heard his name out loud. He plays bass.
Yeah. You know, I heard something randomly. This isn't about names, but it was saying, never make fun of somebody for mispronouncing a word because it means that they read. they had to have read it somewhere, and that's good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm reading it off my notes right now. So we've got Kelly Curtis, their manager, and their business manager, Mike McGinley. That's who's there testifying. On the other side, we got the aforementioned Fred Rosen, Tim Collins, who's Aerosmith's manager, Bertus Downs, who's REM's lawyer, Claire L. Rothman, she's the general manager of the Forum, a very famous venue, and Dave Marsh, who's a rock historian, which I would like to become one of those one day. That sounds like a good job for me. Yeah. So what Pearl Jam is trying to say, they're like, hey, look, this is ridiculous. Here's what we want. We want the $18. We want the $10 service fee. That should be totally doable. And we want the full itemization, not just on the tickets. We also want it on all the ads and promotional materials. So everybody knows what's going on here. So, and this is what they're kind of going off of. Ticketmaster saying it would be impossible for them to make money at that, which I find a little bit odd because they were willing to do the free show for $1.50, and they're processing, fees, and they're not going to do anything that's going to lose them money. So I assume that they could afford to do it for $1.50. So why is $1.80 out of question? It's kind of weird to
they
me.
could definitely afford to. What they're probably referring to is that they wouldn't want to do that for every show that they do.
Well, and I'm thinking that because the free show was a free show, there wasn't a venue or a promoter necessarily that needed to get their back scratched, and that's why they couldn't afford it, quote unquote.
That could be, and maybe processing fee situations. I'm not really sure, but I'm with you. They probably could make money. Yep. I mean, it's like your cable TV provider or your cell phone, they could give you that for a penny because it's all bought and paid for. All the cables are in the ground or the towers are built. But they couldn't give it to everyone for that, or they wouldn't be able to maintain. It's a difference between, it's an economics question in terms of whether it's a variable cost or not.
Yeah, exactly. So Ticketmaster around this time, the more typical service fee structures look something like $350 to $725 per ticket, with some reports saying that they'll go up to $15 on certain events and occasions and seats and stuff. Now, this part I actually am okay with Ticketmaster charging for this. A lot of people would be annoyed by it, but I actually see the other side of it. They are also charging an additional phone order fee. So if you call somebody and have that order processed over the phone, which in the 90s, a lot more people are going to do, they would add an extra $2 on top of it. And I'm like, if you got to deal with a human, I understand that, actually.
Well, but I mean, everyone's dealing with a human, right? Because mostly the way that you're going to be getting these things is lining up by the venue. It's the 90s.
Well, that's true.
Like waiting outside and going and there's no autonomous way to get these tickets at this point.
There's no printing at home. I mean, even back in my day, in the early 2000s, you still, like for most of the shows I would go to, I went to a company called Tickets West that I don't believe is around anymore, or maybe has been absorbed by this entity. I'm not sure. And I did it by going to Safeway, going to the customer service counter and talking to the nice lady that worked there forever and being like, I would like 2 tickets to the Thrice show at the Roseland on this date. And she would look it up in the computer, and that's how I did it at the time.
I can remember even some settings where there'd be physical tickets and they'd be for sale at different places, and it would sell out one place, but not elsewhere.
Yep.
So you could be like, they're out of tickets there, but they still have tickets over at this, grocery store or at the record store over here.
Yep.
Different world
for sure. Now this is all
that would
done.
be interesting. You could see why bands would hate that, because that would lead to unsold tickets that could have been sold if they were apportioned to a different location.
Yeah, exactly. Or like maybe that store did a better job at promoting it and this other store didn't do a very good, it's kind of messy that way.
And you would also sometimes have, that's right. Sorry, I'm just remembering deep back in my brain.
Yes.
They would have like a lot of pre-sale tickets, but then there were some tickets that you could get there. It was like a limited amount. So that was probably based on like, we didn't sell 5. So they're like, okay, great. That's 5 that we can sell at the door, to the first people in line, basically.
Yeah. What's weirder to me is when I'll see a show that's sold out, like that legitimately sold out. And then the day of the show, they're like, actually, we've got 40 more tickets.
That happens all the time.
Where do those come from? And why didn't you just, if the show sold out 2 weeks ago, why didn't you just have them be available? What's this about?
I presume a lot of it is scalping these days.
Well, there's something that's probably what that episode will turn into, is an episode on scalping, because there's something very suspicious going on with these new secondary markets and stuff. Because you mean to tell me that all the Swifties in the world, the most dedicated fan base, and the K-pop fans, and all these people who are relatively young, grew up with the internet, I imagine out of the millions of them, there are a handful at least that know a thing or two about writing a script, that they can't get their hands on these tickets, and it's all going to quote unquote bots before these very resourceful, smart young people are able to do it. Or are some of them just allocated to brokers and everybody's getting a whole heck of a lot more money out of the deal? I'm just saying, it seems a little fishy to me.
That's an interesting question, Blake.
Yeah. So that wasn't happening exactly at this time, though, even though maybe it was in smaller and less obvious ways. But that wasn't really the order of the day.
I wonder if there's fewer scalpers, because the ultimate way that you nick scalpers is by charging more.
Yeah, you could charge more.
Scalpers are exploiting a gap between the sell price of something and the demand price of something. It's just like people would scalp if I was selling, packs of cigarettes for $2. People would buy them all up and then sell them to somebody else for $8 because that's what people are willing to pay. But if I was selling them for $10, they're not going to do that because it doesn't make sense. Now that sucks, is the downside, that nobody wants to have to pay more for stuff. So it goes.
Again, related. But this is why it's suspicious. So Ticketmaster at one point, I believe it was for a Radiohead concert. Don't quote me on that, but it was for a large band of the time, sometime in the mid 2000s. You would click on it to go purchase the ticket, and it would take you to a secondary website. And it was kind of confusing. You're like, oh, is this the only place to buy tickets? Why are these all marked up so significantly? What's going on? I clicked the thing from the band's website to go to Ticketmaster. And now Ticketmaster is redirecting me immediately to this other website. What's this about? And it turns out that other website was also owned by Ticketmaster, and it was a quote unquote secondary market website. How'd they get the tickets over there? And why is Ticketmaster linking directly to there when there are still tickets available on the official Ticketmaster website? Very suspicious. I'm just saying. It's a little weird. That was odd. That was a legal thing that happened. That's, again, probably something we'll get into when we tackle the more modern day version of this. But anyway, Ticketmaster is saying, Fred Rosen in particular says, Pearl Jam's demanding this $180 service fee. Take it or leave it. And Ticketmaster says, no, we're going to leave it. So we're not going to have this massive tour come through all our venues.
We're just not going to tour.
We're just not going to. No. I mean, Fred Rosen basically says we're not doing it, and And the Pearl Jam says, cool, I guess we're not touring then. So
crazy.
They blew it all up over a couple bucks. Now, here's where the other side of the argument comes in. So let's be honest, $3.50 versus $1.80, even in the 90s, not that big of a deal, right? It's not that crazy. If Pearl Jam really this is just the other side of the argument. If Pearl Jam really, really wanted to get the tickets to be $20 and under,
they could have lowered their own.
They could have lowered their own rate and still made several $1 million. Right.
Right.
So,
or done what everybody else does. Say we want to make $18 a head. They're going to charge $3.50, so they're going to be 22 instead of 20, which sucks.
Yeah,
but yeah, they could have. It's a principled stand, right? But they could have made it work.
They could, and why we know they could have is because Green Day at the exact same time did that, and they were they had just released Welcome to Paradise. Like they weren't quite as big as Pearl Jam, but they were very big. Like this was 1994 Green Day dropping. So,
but still, like I take that point. It's true. Like the band could just accept less for themselves, and there's not anything wrong with suggesting that they should. I'm sure that all of them are doing rather well financially now.
Right.
So what would it have mattered? But I mean, as a counterpoint, if they didn't, somebody has to fight Ticketmaster, or that $3.50 is gonna be $5 or $7 or $10.
Which is exactly what has happened. That's exactly what has occurred. Yeah. So I understand that point. And there are some people that argue it rather strongly. There was a podcast I listened to that was their main takeaway, and I'm like, that
they should have just lowered their own price?
Yeah, if they couldn't get Ticketmaster to do it, they should have just lowered their own price. And part of that is they were basing that on what happens after this. So during the summer and fall of 94, Pearl Jam's like, all right, we're going to route around Ticketmaster. So that's a pretty gutsy stance, though. They're going to play.
That wouldn't be easy.
Yeah. Fairgrounds, parks, use local ticketing services. Yep.
Whoa.
The problem is most major venues had exclusive Ticketmaster contracts, so it was very difficult to do. And a lot of the local municipalities, specifically, there was a big stumble at the Del Mar Fairgrounds in San Diego. They got canceled by local law enforcement because they didn't think that the ticketing practices that they were engaging in were sufficient enough to keep out non-ticket holders. So they thought it was going to get out of hand and out of control. And so the cops actually canceled the show.
They shut it down ahead of time, like before that even happened?
That's what it sounds like. Yeah. Obviously I wasn't there, but the law enforcement was saying the crowd control is going to be impossible. There's too many people here. And the fact that you guys aren't using a good enough ticketing service is the reason why.
That's ridiculous. I mean, like it's totally their right to do that if either things are rowdy and out of hand, or if you're close to or exceeding the capacity of the venue space that you're in, which indeed, if they let in too many people, that would occur. But to do it preemptively based on like, we think that this is likely to happen because, your barcodes aren't strong enough.
That's what they said. They're like, we're worried that there's not standard enough, or not like solid enough ticketing. And so when fans arrive and they can just sneak in, basically, it's going to become a problem was their stance on it. And I don't really know. It seems to me like they were being a little gun shy there, but regardless, the show got canceled. And the other problem was when they did this, the tickets ended up being like more expensive in some cases. So it's like, it kind of didn't. Really? Yeah. And so it didn't really work. And ultimately the tour didn't go very well, had a lot of problems. And it just was, I understand. And I actually really appreciate fine. We're going to punk rock this ourselves and go around you. I love that, but it didn't really work. So
it's easy to punk rock your way around it when you're Fugazi, but once you get to a certain scale and size, there do become safety concerns and things like that. That's really interesting. It doesn't surprise me that it would end up being more. That is one of those things where it's like, it sucks to see how much this company is taking away from it. And I know this runs counter to some of what I was saying earlier, but like they're at a scale that they can do it in an efficient manner. in terms of cost. They can do it for less than they're charging.
Yes.
But it can be difficult to match that with, state fairgrounds doing their best.
Yep. So they closed the case in 1995. The DOJ closes it, and it just kind of totally fizzles out. They never filed any charges. There was a brief public statement on it that was kind of toothless.
Why did the DOJ close the case? It seems like a super solid antitrust case.
I think, so what not Pearl Jam, excuse me. What Ticketmaster has long said is that they only have control of about 10% of the market. That's what their argument is. And they base that on what they control themselves, right? Like, we own this, we own that. We only, their whole thing is we only control about 10% of the market.
And they're probably counting every fair that, like, any sort of ticketed event that exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which you see these days, like, Amazon will say the same thing where they're like, oh, well, we only control 12% of retail. And it's like, well, you control 60% of online retail though.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and they're like, no, look at Walmart. No, we're hardly a drop in the bucket compared to all of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And so that's a lot of, I have to imagine why the case got closed is because that was, by the numbers that they are presenting, it's a fairly strong argument. The problem is those numbers are missing some things, like the things we were talking about in the first part of the episode, where maybe they don't own that venue. Maybe they don't own that ticketing service, that local quote unquote ticketing service. But when they've negotiated to control the entire calendar, which is essentially the inventory that venue is selling, yeah, they don't officially own it, but they kind of own it, right? Mm-hmm. They're literally controlling the butts in the seats. So it's a little dirty. It's a little dirty to say we only control 10% of the market. It's like, realistically, you control like 85. Really?
Huh.
There's some other services, there's Access, and there's some other fairly large ones, but nobody even comes close to Ticketmaster.
The old test, I think it was from Brandeis, but it basically came down entirely to, is it causing economic harm to consumers vis-a-vis they're paying more for something? Mm-hmm. That's what's come up a lot lately with tech-oriented antitrust stuff. Right. Is like, oh, well, Facebook doesn't charge anybody anything. Mm-hmm. So therefore, how could they possibly be, causing consumer harm, right? When the customers are actually the advertisers, but that's neither here nor there. So I could see them making an argument on that basis of like, actually, we're driving down the price of this. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people who, people, yes, but business entities probably is a more accurate way of saying it. That this is not necessarily good if Ticketmaster goes away or gets broken up, or if they were found to be in violation of some anti-competitive stuff. It's not necessarily good for these local promoters even that work with them and get their palms greased by these standard fees. There's a lot of people who have an interest in things staying the way they are. And unfortunately, that also includes a lot of major acts. Pearl Jam's one of the only ones that have gotten to that level of notoriety that plays this level and like scope of show that has ever really done anything. And the reason is because now these big artists, I'm not going to say specifically, but like Taylor Swift sized acts, they're getting a chunk of the action too. So it's not really in their interest to take a stand against it when it's like, look, you're going to fill up a 30,000 plus venue place. You've got a huge crew. You got a huge show. All of this is on you. And we're going to give you $2.50 out of the $6 we're taking on top of your door fee, on top of everything else. Right. And this gets into the local and push.
You can make an argument that if something like that's happening, then it effectively is as though it doesn't matter. If you're selling like a $30 ticket and there's a $6 Ticketmaster fee on top of it, right? And let's say the artist gets 2/3 of the ticket, which they wouldn't, but whatever. So the artist gets $20 off the ticket, and then Ticketmaster strikes a deal with the artist. They also get 2/3 of the Ticketmaster fee, right? Mm-hmm. So now they're staying level on both of those. This is just all hypothetical numbers. Well, at that point, the artist is getting the same amount kind of regardless. So it's kind of the same as if the artist was just saying it's a $36 ticket with no fee versus a $30 ticket with $6 fee.
It is. It's
there's not as much harm.
Well, what has happened is this has become a way that the artists can still be the cool guy, right? And still be like, no, our tickets cost this, and that's what it is. And Ticketmaster then becomes basically the whipping post for all this. Like, this is the thing that's the bad guy. They're the one charging the fee. Don't tell them that we're getting some of that fee as well. And don't tell them that every part of a large concert experience is up for negotiation. The parking is up for negotiation. The beer is up for negotiation. And this is how merch cuts became a thing, from my understanding. So lately, there have been a lot of like medium-sized acts saying, why are the venues getting a cut of our merch? We're already bringing all these people in to get, the argument is, we don't get a cut of the beer sales. Why do they get a cut of the merch sales? Well, that's the thing. Larger acts have enough power to negotiate that they might get 20 cents of the beer sales. I'm just saying, this doesn't happen across the board. I just know that everything's up for negotiation when you have enough leverage.
Yeah, I mean, you used to never see merch takes from venues, and then post-COVID, it started happening like crazy, which is devastating because for smaller bands, like I used to run budgets for small bands and stuff, and merch is the only way you're affording to stay out there on the road when you're playing smaller venues. Absolutely. Just the way it goes. But that's interesting. I haven't heard of artists getting takes on concessions. I'm sure it exists. I mean, I never worked with massive acts. Yeah. I did note that, like, when I was when I went to Metallica, they had, what's their whiskey? I don't think it's called Unforgiven, but it's a Metallica song reference. It's maybe Blackened.
Blackened. I think it's Blackened.
Blackened whiskey, yes. So I did notice, and I thought this was actually kind of clever on their part. A lot of all the signature drinks around the venue featured blackened whiskey. So that's like a clever way for them to be able to like, well, you have to buy our liquor and put it in our drink, and then that's going to scratch us back in this way. So,
because Metallica can negotiate all that stuff. And
I did have their like signature, like, death grip cocktail, and it was like the blackened whiskey with a lot of lemonade and like some grenadine in there or something. And I was like, it's a Shirley Temple?
No, it's a death grip.
It's the Metallica death grip. Like, this is way too sweet, man. This is a drink made for children.
And it's $27, of course.
It was not cheap. It was very expensive.
Yeah. But it's Metallica, actually, like, I love Metallica, huge fan, but their manager that got caught on tape doing, this is like early mid 2000s, like doing some negotiating that a lot of people would have probably not thought that he was going to do. So, whether the guys knew about that or not, I don't know the details around it. I'd have to look up that particular
I'm going to see who their manager was. Peter Mensch.
I think this would have been 2000.
Yeah, I figured it was Q Prime.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of that stuff. Yeah, Metallica, Cage Elephant. I don't know if he was their manager then or not.
And I don't remember if it was the manager or who it was from their camp, but I'm kind of going off of a rather foggy memory here. But if there was a Google machine, it could tell you. There was some sort of shenanigans going on with some of the exactly what we're talking about, like, oh, you're getting a chunk of the parking too, or you're getting a chunk of whatever. And it's interesting, right? Because you can make the argument that these venues and that these ticketing agencies and these promoters would have no business if it wasn't for the artists. There would be absolutely no reason for any of this to exist. None of this infrastructure would need to happen if there weren't a lot of people who love Metallica or who love Katy Perry or who love insert large artist here. So you could make an argument that they should get a cut of all this stuff, and maybe they should be the, basically getting a larger chunk of the revenue than they typically have in the past. But on the other side, these artists need all these pieces of infrastructure in place in order to do their jobs, so they all kind of need each other to some degree. It almost feels like everyone's pointing a gun at each other. It's kind of what it feels like.
It's tough. I mean, like, as a person who like dreams a lot of owning a venue, it's that they're the ones that in the business of it all that I'm like, man, I don't know how you make it work.
Seriously.
Because it's like running a bar or a restaurant, which is already an awful business, except in this one, you only get to be open for 3 hours every day. And there's most of your money has to go to pay out the band that's playing. And then you just sell as many drinks as you can in the meantime.
It's basically all drinks and if they serve food, it's all drinks. That's what it is.
Yeah. It's one of those things, like a lot of things in the music industry, where it always kind of comes down to, like, if you have a giant, venue and Metallica is willing to play at your venue, this is a gift from God. It's just money. You're like, this is just, we're going to sell out for sure. They're going to get this many drinks. You can model this, and it's just like solid money. And that's going to be a good night one way or the other. But you don't always have Metallica. It's hit or miss, and you're going to lose money a lot of other nights. So your take from the big guys has to subsidize, just for the business to make sense, a lot of nights when you're not making any money. But then those big guys are like, why are we paying you all this money? And you're like, well, fair. Yeah. You're paying to subsidize all the other guys. Same way labels work. It always comes down to that in the music business, is successful people having to subsidize the ecosystem that creates a world that spawned them in some ways.
100%. Yeah. And the local venue thing is like, I can't imagine the overhead that comes with it. But say awful. You're an artist that has this opinion, right? That I'm putting all the butts in the seats. What do I need you for? All right, go buy a venue in every local city and see, and then you can have full control. See how well that's going to go for you, right? There's almost no artist that's big enough to pull that off. So what are you going to do, right? Kind of the whole ecosystem. Everybody does need each other at the end of the day.
You do, and I mean, honestly, there's a lot of questions of who holds risk for different things. I actually had a friend of mine growing up. Her dad had a lawsuit against Metallica. He was a lawyer. He was the lawyer in it for like their security. Somebody had suffered an injury or something in the pit. And as I'm recalling, there was an issue with the security. They were saying that the security had been negligent, and they were able to sue Metallica. So, I mean, I would have assumed that would be due to the venue, but seemingly that liability passed off to the band. Maybe the band is having. So there's a lot of that question too, because I mean, you get thousands of people together in a room and you serve them all alcohol and you play them metal. Things can go wrong at that point, and there's a question of who's going to be left holding the bag.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that is kind of where this portion of the story ends. They fought the man. I wouldn't say the man won necessarily, but it didn't quite go the way they expected it to. They lost about an estimated $3 million by not doing that tour. And wow. Yeah, it was not great.
Do you know
for
what
them.
album that tour would have been supporting?
Whatever was out in 1994. I'm not sure.
Been a minute. Let me pull up my...
Ask your assistant, Mr. G. Google.
Vitalogy.
Okay.
Would have been 1994.
Okay.
Which it was right after Versus, so I'm not sure, which one it was kind of pushing.
Yeah, I'm not 100%. I actually should have put that in the notes, but I wasn't paying any attention. I was looking at all the businessy and legal stuff, trying to get the story straight. But,
here's an interesting fun tidbit about that album. So that was released in December 6th, 1994 on vinyl. The vinyl, like the literal, just the vinyl record, sold 34,000 copies in its first week, which was the highest sales of a vinyl album specifically in 1 week since SoundScan had become tracking in 1991. So that's not that weird. I'm sure like Thriller sold a lot more than that. But they held that record until Jack White's Lazaretto in 2014. Wow. That was the vinyl that passed it, which is kind of funny because that's that point in the curve where vinyl started getting really popular again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great album.
If anything, vinyl was not very popular in 94 relative to 10 years prior or 10 years before that.
Yeah. So 100%. It is interesting.
Because, that's a lot of it is, bands do tours, which support the album. And, at different times in history, it's either the tour is a loss leader to support sales of the album, or the album's a loss leader to give the band an excuse to tour and make money. Mm-hmm. Those things can go back and forth a little bit. In the last, in the 2010s, you mostly were hearing about the albums are loss leaders so a band can get out there and make money touring, assuming they're of a certain size. And now that's kind of flipping around again. Bands are making more money from streaming than they were in the 2010s from sales, and believe it or not. And they're not making any money out on the road because everything's so expensive. Hotel rooms, and gas, and and food and all that stuff. Labor, especially at the venues, like it's pretty brutal. So yeah, those two things have flip-flopped a lot of times over music history.
Yep. I mean, that's part of, I just did a interview with Tommy Emmanuel on the Tone Mob podcast, pluggity plug. There we go. And he mentioned that was part of why he started doing solo tours. So he had a band, and I can't remember. He said what it was costing him. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money to tour with the band.
Solo tours are the best business in the whole thing.
So people kept coming up to him and be like, band was great, show was great. And he's doing meet and greets after the show. He's always been doing that. He's just that type of guy. And but people will be like, but man, when you came out by yourself and did that solo acoustic, it was so brilliant. And he kept hearing that enough times. He's like, all right, I guess a solo tour is a thing. And his managers were like, are you sure? And then it just did great.
Yeah, no, dude. I mean, like, I was always when I was managing bands, I was always telling my partner then, the Blake before Blake, like, we got to get us like an instrumental solo guitar guy that can play, 200, 300 cap rooms. Because that guy driving a Honda Civic on his own lonesome around the country. I mean, he can bring one buddy with him if he wants to, if they can share a hotel room. The economics on that are sweet.
Oh yeah.
that totally works, even if you're smaller. Carrying a band around, and I mean, talking about diverting risk out, if you're Tommy Emmanuel or anybody like that, you add 4 guys in a band that aren't in your band, they're getting a day rate. That's just more money that you can lose when you have that show that you inevitably play that doesn't bring in much money. Because you got to pay all those guys out.
Yeah, it get canceled due to weather or something. Like, there's all kinds of things that happen, and you're not getting paid for that, but you still got to pay. So
yeah, and I mean, ultimately, and this is like a whole other thing, but like when you're building a budget around routing a tour, what happens a lot is you have these standard days. So like just being a day out on the road is going to have a variable amount of gas. You're going to have per diems for everybody. If you have hired guns, you have a straight guaranteed day rate. Your tour manager has a guaranteed, day rate. And hotel rooms. Sorry, that's the big thing. So all those things, if it's a baby band, you might be talking about like $1,000 or $1,500 or something, per day. That's just the cost of being out there on the road. So what'll happen a lot is you have, a solid gig in New York, and then you've got, that's got a good guarantee. And then you've got another solid gig in South Carolina. That's a corporate event, going to pay you $6,000. You're going to make sure to hit that one. In the meantime, there might, as you're routing down, only be opportunities to bring in $600 from that show. And you'd say, oh, well, it's costing you $1,500 a day. How can you bring in $600? But bringing in $600 is a heck of a lot better than bringing in nothing. When you have off days on the road, it's brutal. You're just losing that whole $1,500. If I could, route you and bring in $600 that night, at least I'm only losing $900 that day. And then we make it all back, a few stops later. So yeah, there's a lot of that interesting economics, and basically the fixed costs of your day rate are what dictate a lot of it. And if you're on your own, baby, you can just cruise.
It gets a lot tastier. Yeah.
That's where usually it's cheaper to fly.
Oh yeah. Yep. To have less days, right?
I mean, for sure, less days, but even then, just like the gas cost, if it's just you and a guitar, I'll fly you from New York to South Carolina, screw everything in between.
Yeah. That's true.
We would always sorry, I'm just rambling here, but I remember the hardest thing. We had one of the bands I was working with had a really great gig in Miami, and routing down to Miami and back, we did 2 nonsense shows down the eastern seaboard of Florida and 2 more up, the Tampa was maybe good. And then there was something, over in Panama City Beach or something. There was a lot of nonsense, not bringing in any money shows because Miami's just hard. You can't just drive down to there in a day and then play a show. You got to have a night on the way down and a night on the way up.
It's way down there. That's a long ways. Miami,
yeah, going from the next reasonable place that you're going to make money, which is Atlanta. Yeah, you're not getting down there in one day. It's going to take 1-2 days. So that's some weird gigs that you're playing, along the way.
All this conversation has shifted a little bit. It just made me think, though, what I'm going to do this weekend/week is I'm going to go do an interview with some fellas in a band, and I'm doing it on their off day, and I'm just realizing, man, they really don't have anything better to do than to come talk to me in a condominium. Surely they've got better things to do than that, but apparently not, because that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, some bands like love to do stuff on their off days and do adventures. Others just want to like lay around and not talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm. I think I would
most of them, your manager is like, I need you to do these 3 different radio events and you're going to talk to press and you're going to do all this crap. And they're like, no, I don't want to do anything.
Well, I'm not dealing with the managers on this one, so they must just be real bored.
They must like you. Who is it?
It's actually the guys from Charles Wesley Godwin's band. So
cool.
It'll be fun. Yeah. So all those guys are Stringjoy artists. So hey, it'll be a good time all around. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That company that we own. We don't talk about it too much in this podcast, but Blake and I own a guitar string manufacturing company. If you hear the errant noise behind me, that is the sound of guitar strings being made. I can hear it, and it bothers me a lot. And I don't know how much of it comes through on the recording.
You know
but
what?
Just behind this wall are a bunch of machines.
Well, I've got some good plugins. I think we eliminate 99% of it, so you're good. Don't worry.
Thank goodness. Well, Blake, you got anything else, or shall we wrap it up?
I think we pretty much covered it. Unfortunately, there's no dramatic ending to get into. It kind of just fizzled out.
Oh, there'll be a dramatic ending in part 2. Come, wait a few episodes and we will hit the Ticketmaster Live Nation Saga part 2.
Part 2, when we investigate the Death Star and tell you how that all works. Well, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out for this episode of Tape Spaghetti. I hope you earned something. No, learned something is what I hope you did. And I hope you enjoyed this.
I hope we earned something.
Oh, I think we might get like $3 from YouTube out of this.
Give me that $3, baby.
Yeah. So thank you to everybody who's checking this out. Please share this with somebody if you haven't done that already. All these episodes are a little bit different and cover different subject matter. So if you didn't like the one where a guy got beheaded, maybe, send this one instead if you think that your friends might prefer that. So thank you all for hanging out. Appreciate you. And we'll talk to you on the internet very soon.